I'm fond of the Sisters of Balcora spinning 100 billion stars, because when Amanda said that, I got chills.
Yeah.
Like that was just lovely. And the shot we've got for that is really pretty too.
Yeah, yeah.
And then maybe the guide stone.
I think those three things, like you could really just pare it down, because I mean, the thing with Adagio too is like we don't even really know where it's going to end up in the game. Like
that actually that bookends the entire sort of like backstory rather well, because Kartoba starts the story.
Yeah.
You know, the guide stone is the thing that motivates the story.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the Balcora with the 100 billion stars kind of ends the story, at least up until now.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's basically beginning of Homeworld 1, you know, end of Homeworld 2.
Yeah.
And now we're doing Homeworld 3. What about this, man? How about it starts as Adagio, and it's Adagio, and then Adagio just kind of gooses down and kind of goes away, and then it's like boom, 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 boom.
So the Adagio for strings, which was the choral version that was featured in the original Homeworld in 1999, is coming back for Homeworld 3. It's one of the great pieces of music that was created in the 20th century. And it has a resonance to it that has given it such longevity. The piece was originally written in 1936 by a then 26-year-old Samuel Barber. The piece has been around for many decades, but it resonates with every new generation, I think, just because it is such an incredible piece of composition.
The origin of that particular piece of music in the Homeworld franchise allegedly came about one morning when Relic CEO Alex Garden, back in the 90s, was woken by his alarm clock radio that was playing Adagio for strings.
Alex woke up one morning and heard it on the radio and had an epiphany that that song would be perfect for the original Homeworld.
Emergency hyperspace procedures initiated.
Adagio is as much of Homeworld as the story and the characters and the ships.
It's a signature song. It's part of the identity of the franchise. We're not putting it in Homeworld 3 because for nostalgic reasons. We're putting it in there because it has to be in there, you know? Just, you know, they didn't put the Imperial March into Star Wars for nostalgic reasons. They did it because it's the frickin' Imperial March, you know? Like, come on. So I wouldn't say it's nostalgia. I think it's just intrinsic to the world. It's just a very beautiful piece. It has a wonderful sense of longing and sort of at the same time hope, and it makes such a sort of interesting and intriguing contrast with the science fiction content of the franchise. You know, like you're looking at these giant spaceships and the scale is so epic, and yet this song is so soft, and it just really works, you know? It takes you somewhere else. Music is like an expression of a place and a time. It's a moment, you know? That's why music is such a powerful memory trigger for us all. And you get as a player, it really happened, you know, like you really felt something there, you know?
No one's left. Everything's gone. Carrick is burning.
For a lot of people who came to the game like I did, as a kid or a young adult, Adagio in Homeworld 1 just became this seminal moment in their gaming history. And I think that that is just burned in fans' memories.
Carrick is being consumed by a firestorm. The scaffold has been destroyed. All orbital facilities destroyed.
And so when we all sat with that as developers and publishers and marketers and all the different types of folks that we have working on this title, we wanted to find a way to bring Adagio back and honor the memory and how meaningful it is to people without cheapening it at all, because it is a beautiful memory and it's also a beautiful song with a ton of wonderful history behind it.
I remember opening the gates.
The Adagio for strings, it's a bit of a hybrid piece. So what I put together was a blending of the vocals that references the original choral version with the addition of live strings. It's been absent in the last couple releases, so I had the opportunity to do a version of it that conforms to the aesthetic of the Homeworld music. Homeworld, being an RTS, has basically two modes of gameplay that the music needed to support. There's the more meditative aspect of it, harvesting, shipbuilding, exploration, and then combat mode, which required a bit more adrenaline. So the sort of sweeping, big synth electronic sounds seem to work really nicely with building your fleets and harvesting. And the other aspect being combat tracks, which had all of the more aggressive percussion to build the intensity for those moments. So now that we're doing the Homeworld 3 soundtrack, there is a lot of risk involved because the fans are expecting it to be an authentic Homeworld experience. And I've been meditating on how do I achieve that. We released 2 tracks through the FIGS update, and I found that really interesting, being in the process of developing the music to get some feedback from the fans. And there was an overwhelming response about going back to the big synth ambient sound that was in the first Homeworld. That actually put an impression on me in terms of the overall direction. So what I wanted to do was stay true to that idea of creating music that is obviously in the style that the previous games have explored, but also bringing in new sets of players and combining different instruments together to create some music that is staying true to the franchise, but also evolving the sound forward in a way so that it doesn't feel derivative and it feels as fresh in 2021 as the original did in 1999. And what was like, you know, your lyrical approach and your range is what's so gripping about the arrangements that you put together. Like some of those high notes, your range is just unbelievable, really.
Yeah, I'm lucky in that respect.
But it's just finding words and sounds that fit the melody, fit the feel. I mean, it doesn't have to
sound as though it makes sense. It just, if it all fits fits the feeling, then
you know, that's how I tend to work. It's quite instinctive.
We've always been in the business of being a third-party audio supplier, so we've really been working the remote model for the last 2 decades. So when COVID hit, it was almost like everyone was dealing with what we deal with every day. The outcome of that was working with some pretty amazing musicians from around the world in a way that I really didn't expect would be so effortless. It is kind of nice to have the tracks have this really long gestation period. You know, the Adagio piece has been sort of floating around for the last 16, 17 months, you know, with you doing your parts almost like 12 months ago. And now the strings go on tomorrow. And really
Paul, you know, gave us information about the musicians and about this collaboration that he was building. And I think what I was most excited for when we talked to Paul was finding out more about these musicians and who they were.
I specifically chose them because they had a particular sound that really worked. It's Middle Eastern, but it's almost like, you know, music from circa, you know, 800 AD. That whole sort of aesthetic of near Middle East blending with, you know, Western influences, that was really what I was going for in terms of selecting the musicians. And what's
there is finger bells also.
Your playing has so much feel, but it's also your meter is so good.
I had no idea about the game before, so he started explaining the details about the music and about the style they want. I said that I'll send you some demos, and then he really liked it. After that, we started talking more about the details. He really knows what he wants. It was really easy to communicate with Paul.
That, like, you know, we have, like, this is like a synth kick drum. When you put your other parts over top of like the electronic sound, like, you know, it just adds that dimension where, you know, everything is so precisely played, but there's such nuance that you put into each part. That all of it together just gives it so much life. I mean, you know, your instincts on that is just so perfect. Like, I love that section when it all drops in with the finger percussion.
Wow, yeah. It's really outstanding the way it came together. I love that. The Armenian Duduk it's unusual in that it's not like you can just pick it up and play it. It has to warm up. The reed has to get some moisture in it and that type of thing. And studio sessions, there's always a hecticness where everybody's like, okay, let's do it, and it's kind of like, not ready yet. Collaborating with Paul was really one of the better experiences that I've had collaborating with a producer.
So, here we are.
I liked that he was professional. He kept a certain amount of mystery about the work, which really allowed your mind to sort of go places, you know, sort of imagining what is this thing, you know, and then you hear he would send a part of a track and an idea, and I would record based on that idea. You know, he would come back and you know, he would respond to that, and you know, then I would respond to that idea with some more recording. And the collaborative process was excellent.
Paul is a composer with a very clear ideas about the direction and sound of his music, so it was relatively easy to relate to him even through the world thing that was pretty much done by email, the creative process was still stimulating and extremely collaborative.
I think, and what Nathaniel was saying too, was that he actually, the thing that Dylan did where it was like a hard cut, like I think I don't mind that idea of just coming in heavy and like a quick sweep up to like boom and then we're off to the races, Like just like a hard cut. You're out of the dream world and you just
cut to black, slam to black.
Yeah.
And then it's mayhem.
Yeah. And then you just
ion beam slices through, through the sky. That could work really well. There are a few people I've worked with in my career that share a special place in my heart. And no matter how many games I make with Paul, no matter how many times I'm in session with him, he constantly surprises me and amazes me at just how quickly and accurately he accesses that frequency. It's like being at a performance, like he's a master of the tool, so you're in a live dialogue with a performer. You're witnessing the act of musical creation like in front of your eyes. Like it's magical.
It's been an awesome exploration over the past 2 years with all of the releases that have happened in the franchise. So for Homeworld 3, I'm continuing in that approach and, evolving the sound again.
Whenever you talk to these longtime Homeworld fans, one of the first things they always bring up is Adagio for strings, the scene where Carrick is burning, and these pivotal moments in Homeworld history, and how Adagio for strings is tied into that. They just always ask, when is it coming back? When is it coming back?
It's a new soundtrack in an existing franchise. It needs to solve two problems. On the one hand, it needs to satisfy the franchise's stylistic body and character, and on the other, it's got to bring something new to the franchise. It's the third in the series. It just can't do the same old thing, right? I think Paul and everyone are looking for that newness. Indeed, this applies to everything about the game, not just the soundtrack, right? Like the gameplay has to have an old and new. The look and feel has to have an old and new. The story has to have an old and new, and so does the soundtrack. The whole thing has to be old and new. It's Paul Ruskay. It's Adagio for strings, and it's in the Homeworld universe. They should expect an awesome soundtrack. That's what I'd expect if I was a fan.